Hello everyone, I'm LD. I'm very excited to show you how to build a serverless application using LoLo Code. So we are in the landing page, and the landing page has a lot of examples on various users using the LoLo Code's platform to build various serverless applications. All right, let's dive into it, right? Let's dive into the Hello World application. Since I'm already signed up to their development console, I didn't be prompted for asking the username and password. All right, before diving into the application, let me explain what we are trying to build. So the goal is to build a simple Hello World API, which is HTTP based, which means that we're going to build a serverless application which has an external URL. And when we invoke the URL, we get Hello World as a response, as an API response. That is it. So the step one, right? So since this video is associated with the Medium post, I'll go through the steps that is mentioned in the Medium post. So the first step is creation in LoLo Code. So I'll create an application. So since it's related to the Medium post, I'll just write Hello World Medium. I'll just leave the description as blank. I'll click next. And now step one is completed. A new application has been created. What you see as the black canvas is the Visual Cloud IDE that LoLo Code provides. This is the greatest value proposition of LoLo Code. I really got offed and intrigued by this, the Visual IDE, right? So let me explain you how this works. So whenever you create an application, you get a Visual IDE where you can actually create functions. You can drag and drop, you can connect various functions, and then create a serverless application. So now that the first step is completed, let's move to the step two, which is drag and drop the HTTP trigger library function to the Visual IDE. So when I click here, you can search. There are a lot of shared library functions that LoLo Code has already created for us. So now since we want to create a Hello World API, we need a trigger rather than HTTP trigger. So I go for trigger. So I select this. I get a trigger. So think of this as a graph with various nodes, right? And here HTTP trigger is one of the nodes. So this is the first node. And let's double click, right? Let's double click and see what's there. So here we need to specify the path, right? So let me mention that it is Hello World Medium, since it's a Medium post, right? So I'll just put it gets auto saved. And now I can again go back to the Hello World Medium. And now that we have created a HTTP trigger successfully, so we are done with the step two. Now let's go to the step three. The step three is set the path for the Hello World API, which is also already done. And now the step four is now we need to log the events, right? Whenever someone invokes the HTTP API, we need to log the events, like when we receive the call, from whom we receive the call, right? So we have to log that. And even for that, LoLo Code provides a shared library function. So we're going to search for a log, and we have the log, right? So we have the log here. So, and now we have two nodes. So as I said, LoLo Code is an IFAS, right? With this integration function as a service. So you can combine two different functions. So this one is a function and this is a function, right? You can combine two different functions. So now I'm going to combine the HTTP trigger to the log. So all the events that comes to HTTP trigger will be forwarded to log and will also be registered here. So since we have this logging function, right, it logs the event data and all the logs will be showed over here. This is the applications log, right? The application name is Hello World Medium and we have the log. We can see the logs over here. So since the application is not running, we don't see any logs over here. But gradually we'll see the logs over here once it starts running. All right, so now we also completed the step four. And now I just want to tweak this, right, to show like how LoLo Code differs from a simple fast application such as AWS Lambda and Azure functions, right? So LoLo Code application supports having application state. So you can maintain the state throughout the application. So I want to show you how to do that. But before we do that, let me show you creating an inline function, right? So far, all these two functions were from the shared library function. Okay. So now let's create an inline function. And By inline function, we just mean that we create a new function. So as part of step 5, we're going to create an inline function. And I clicked here. So this is the inline function, right? So I double click here. I change the name on the settings, and this one is application state, right? I go back to the handler, and we have to change the handler. We need to leverage the application state to see to store the value, like how many times this API has been invoked. So there's a very good Hello World application user guide in the Lolo's landing page. I will actually share you the link in the YouTube video. So this is creating a function using state, right? So let me copy this and then put it over here. Now let's go over line by line, right? So LoLo Code runs a Node.js. It's a Node.js. So far it's supported in Node.js, but I think they have various other languages in the roadmap. So the handler is the application, is the function that gets invoked whenever it gets executed. So we get two variables, namely the event and the context. So from the context, we get the route and the state. So state, as I mentioned, it's the application state, right? So this state persists throughout the application, like not just for this function, right? This state can be used by other functions too, like that are chained together. So we're getting the state. And now we're going to state the count. If the count is nothing, if there is no count variable, then we're setting it as 0. If it's already exists, then we just use the count that's already exists. We do the plus, and then we set the state, new state, into the application state. And then we add the counter to the event object, and then we route that event to the next function. All right, so that's the step 5. And now we're going to create the step 6, which is the final one, to create another inline function for the response, right? So let me go back to the IDE. So we have the HTTP trigger, and this should be connected to the state. And we also have a logging function that logs whenever this function gets executed. And now we need to send a response back to the user, right? So let's create another new function, which is I'll name it as response. So in the settings, I'll name it as response. And now I'll go back to the Hello World application. And since they have the emitter response thing, I'll just copy this. I'll go back to the IDE. This is under response, right? I'll just paste it here. So in the response, we just emit it back to the user, right? So the response is hello world, and we get the counter, like how many times it has been called, back as a response. And then we send the status code as 200. That is it. So we have the final step now. The final step has been completed. Now all we need is to save the function and run it. That's the final step. Let's go ahead and do it. So before that, we need to connect this one to the in. So all these things are named as ports, right? It's the out port and the in port. So we're just connecting the out port to the in port. And so let me save this. And let me save this as version 1.0. And then I run it. Now it's running. So what we're doing here is that, okay, let me go here and grab the link, and then I'll explain you what happens. So this is the link. I'll go to the Postman, put it over here, run that. There you go. We finished it. Let's see, hello world. This has been triggered for one time. Run it again, run it again, run it again. It uses the application state to remember how many times this has been called, and then it uses that value as in the response. That is it. So let me go back to the visual ID to just give you a summary of it. So this is it, right? So this is the HTTP trigger, the library shared function, and from that we do the logs. So let's go over here, right, and see the logs. You see that? So this is the source. The source is LoLo/log function, right? It's the LoLo/log function. And if you go over here, sorry, I have to go back to build. And then this in turn gets connected to the state. And the state is where we use a state, application state, to store the number of hits. And then we forward that to the response inline function. So this is exactly IFAS, right? Which is integration function as service, where we are chaining various functions to create a serverless application. And later, this specific function can be reused in another application, right? You can export this function and reuse in another application. So that's the beauty of this. So where we're chaining various functions to create a serverless application. And this function can be reused in another application. So you can click on this and you can export this, and then you have that in the library. So when you create another application, you can just reuse the function in a different application. All right, this comes to an end of the Hello World API example. Thank you all. See you in a different video. Bye-bye.